Welcome to the BWI Live Postgame Show. I'm Thomas Frank Carr. Still settling into the cockpit here because normally in the non-conference season what happens is I have the fourth quarter to kind of work through stuff and get things set up here for everybody so we have the conversation and everything ready to go. But Penn State pushed that one, and I should say FIU pushed that one into the fourth quarter, 34-0. Some of the early comments in the section, by the way, gotta say, you guys are being super patient with this team. I don't, or we've checked out. I don't know. Fractal Hunter says I may have drank too much of the Kool-Aid. Me too. So we're learning. It's week 2. This off season, we had a lot of time to talk and had a lot of time to think and had a lot of time to put stuff up there in our brains about what we're coming back and the theoretical pieces, and maybe the offensive line isn't as good as we thought it was, and maybe there's some issues with the run game. We're going to break all that down. The first half versus the second half and what Penn State was trying to do in the first half and how all of that kind of adjusted itself into the third quarter and what finally broke through in the fourth. All that coming up on the Labatt Postgame Show. I'm Thomas Frank Carr. Hope you're having a good Saturday afternoon here as the Nittany Lions win 34-0. Get to some of your comments here quick. And it was a win. 34-0, but I want to tell you from a process standpoint, I'm also frustrated by that performance. I think it's fair if the number 2 team in the country has some of those issues that we saw in this game today, that it's fair to be frustrated. Maybe FIU's a little better than I gave them credit for, but I promise when I get things wrong, I want to be able to talk about it and through the process of what we saw versus what happened. So there's some things we'll get into from FIU that they changed this week, and there's now a very obvious growing trend of what you do against Penn State, and it doesn't matter what you did the week before. You do this against Penn State, and that happened where there's some big changes on offense and on defense from FIU. I'd say my biggest mistake was expecting them to do as much as they did against Bethune-Cookman, understanding that they're probably going to change their game plan after week 1. These are all the things that happen early in the season and, week to week within game planning. But that's leaning too much on the game film and on week 1 without kind of peering into the future of the crystal ball. Absolutely want to admit that because Michael McCullen says, turns out you can put lipstick on a pig. God bless you, T. Frank. Yeah, so that's what happened. That's what those 2 late touchdowns were absolutely lipstick on a 20-0 shutout. Now, I want to give Penn State credit for the shutout. Like, you may have some frustrations with the defense giving up 78 yards to Keon Owens, but they did allow, it was 40 carries for 3.6 yards in total. And I know rushing stats and passing stats in college football make all that very confusing, but for the most part, they held everybody under 5 yards or 4 yards a carry until very late. That last run by 20 put him over that 4.5 yards per carry. So for most of the game, what I'm trying to say is through stats and facts, most of the game, Penn State was able to hold FIU's run game mostly intact. Now, the problem was they were giving up 4th downs and short 3rd downs that allowed for some long drives, a 10-play drive and a 13-play drive within this game, but 4 3-and-outs where they allowed -3 yards, 5, 8, and -1. So there's some really good stuff in there. Penn State in the middle, more than the middle 8, through the second, through the fourth quarter, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 consecutive punts, and on both sides of that was an interception, turnover on downs, and then a fumble. So there's some really good stuff from the defense. That's a real positive here. But the offense grinding out another victory. And they didn't want to. So let's dive into this. Stephen Light says, T. Frank, you need combat pay to watch this stuff. Listen, I'm doing this for a job. I feel bad for you. Like, this is the point of this show is going to be, I'm going to try to give you the specifics of your frustration. Why isn't it working? Why aren't they ripping off big runs? Why aren't they ripping off explosive touchdowns? I want to give you that as a gift to your frustration. David says, O-line run game is the biggest issue. What's the deal? So let's start there. Penn State saw the same game plan I did last week. And this is, I want to be very clear. I'm not trying to retcon what happened to say I'm right, but to me, what I interpreted that is they were trying to hit home runs early. Go back and look at all the runs that went outside the tackles. We talked about this on the tailgate show. There were seams in that defense through motion and through spread formations where they got gashed the outside the tackle box. They've got some really big defensive tackles. Miami's a hotbed of recruiting, and even some of the lower level teams, if those players come home and they go to a place like FIU, they've got some big-bodied guys up front. So interior, that was where their strength of their defense was. So running around it generally is the thing. Here's the difference: is Bethune-Cookman had an option offense with an option quarterback, and they were running from spread sets. Penn State was running from 3 tight end sets and 2 tight end sets and 6 offensive lineman sets. And that brings more bodies in the box and more opportunity for chaos. But most importantly, Penn State's running backs are not good in space. They're not good laterally. And specifically, Nick Singleton. I put this up over in the Blue White Illustrated message board in the live thread. I didn't have a chance to get it out on social media for everyone to see. But if you want to go check that out, dollar deal, all that stuff, subscribe here to the YouTube channel. Subscribe to the BlueWhiteIllustrated.com so you can see some of these things. I'm trying to incorporate more of my actual film breakdowns instead of just stills during the game. Nick Singleton's biggest issue is setting up blocks. He struggles with seeing what can be. He only sees what is. So in one example, he has Khalil Dinkins blocking one player, and then a corner is the other player in pursuit. So basically, Andy Kotelnicki's taken the entire offense and gone this way. Gone, okay? So now it's Dinkins and Singleton versus a corner and a safety. In the math of your mind, which one of those would have the advantage? Penn State got 8 yards on this play. But Singleton's focus on what Dinkins is doing and trying to read that block instead of trying to read the situation. The corner in pursuit, the camera, right? Right? He's this way. He is perpendicular. His hips are going to the sideline. Singleton, if he has the awareness to settle in and cut back, put a foot in the ground, and manipulate the space to create a lane for himself, there are at least 3 explosive plays from Nick Singleton where he's over 150 yards in this game. Penn State was trying to hit outside. They were trying to hit home runs and have this be 34-0 at the half. And they couldn't hit them. That's the first half. Like, to me, interpreting what the game plan was so much of what we talked about. Motions into run plays, sweeps, end arounds, trying to get guys on the edge of the offense. It was the right plan given what we saw last week. But what FIU did is different. The situation was different, and there is a playbook on how you play Penn State. Last week I said it was much less about there being an extra player in the box and more about the run blocking up front. Now, I have to go see the run blocking specifically to say that if that was a problem this week overall, but I saw multiple opportunities for Nick Singleton and Katron Allen in the secondary clean through the hole. So just off the face value, I do not think the run game and the run plays were the issue today. I think the issue was the running backs in the second level not turning those into touchdowns or explosive plays. And that was the plan. So that's why at half, I have to look up what the halftime score was. It was 10-0. Because it was as if they were trying to hit home runs and they kept hitting singles. It was like they were trying to hit home runs and they were striking out. And by striking out, I mean not getting points. They were still getting yards. They were still churning yards. But that's, again, going to these drive charts. Why it's frustrating is what could have been a 7-play drive for 87 yards and a touchdown, or a 6-play drive for 87 yards and a touchdown, is a 10-play drive that takes up almost 4 minutes, 5 minutes to go turnover on downs. The other aspect of this is that, yes, this week, FIU was putting an extra player in the box. And they were trying to stop the run. Last week, they were playing a lot of too high coverages. I covered this in my 5 things to watch for. They played 6 coverages last week. Fairly certain they played maybe 2 or 3, this one. And they were predominantly playing a single high defense, and they were always throwing a safety at the front side of the play. They were trying to throw numbers at Penn State's run game. That is what happened on some of those interior run plays. But Penn State still had the blockers, and they had the angles in the first half. When you add a safety into the box and you have one-on-ones outside, you have to chuck it deep. Allar had a couple of opportunities. He couldn't hit Kyron Hudson. Whether Kyron Hudson slowed down, the TV copy said Kyron Hudson slowed down. They don't have a back shoulder game. He put one inside too far that didn't get a pass interference down near the 5-yard line. There is that Allar lofting the ball thing still. Not throwing to where the receiver is going, but trying to throw a safe ball where he can have a play on it. And yes, a 15-yard pass is good, but when Devonte Ross has a step on an FIU defensive back, you want to put that out in front. He's already done the work of winning the route. And that was a struggle for this team of just the deep passing. In the third quarter, so you flood the underneath zones. You take away a lot of those things. And Penn State, I believe, in the first half, was trying to hit some of those shot plays. They want to put that on film, and here's why. Because if you build play 8 in the box and play 3 safeties deep and just stay on top of the vertical routes from Penn State's passing attack, and they're not going to be able to consistently and succinctly move the ball down the field. There is a shortcut or short circuit for the offense, and it's cover 3. Penn State wants to threaten those deep passes on the outside. So they took some shots. They didn't hit. So part of it is the shot selection. Part of it is the taking and making of said shots. Now we fast forward into the third quarter, and this is really kind of the difference in the game, is Penn State stopped trying to run outside, and they went back to their bread and butter of 4.5 yards. So they go on a 12-play, 60-yard drive, which ends in a field goal. Again, a frustration of taking 5 minutes off the clock to end in a field goal. And we'll get to the issues and some of the issues in the passing game and all that stuff in a minute, but short passes, they adjusted to, if you're going to attack cover 3 and you're going to attack underneath, you need to have spacing routes, making sure you can find the holes within the zones in between all of the underneath defenders. So Luke Reynolds becomes a big part of the passing game. That's the switch there, and then they start running more counter and power and letting their downhill running backs go downhill. And it didn't necessarily work to an explosive degree. Nick Singleton finished with 76 yards. And here's the thing. To talk about Nick Singleton and some of the issues he has, the offense still delivered 5.8 yards per carry for Nick Singleton. He still had a good day on the ground. But if you're saying, why didn't they get the big plays against FIU? They couldn't run people out of certain looks, and they couldn't throw them out of those looks, so they went down. They went up 10-0 at the half. Then you see on the fourth quarter, Katron Allen is the one running to the outside. In the fourth quarter, Katron Allen gets one of those runs with 3 tight ends leading him to the sideline, and he has the balance, and he has the cutback ability to tiptoe along the sidelines, make the one player miss who had a really bad angle, and suddenly it's a 67-yard touchdown. So the thing they tried to get to all game, they finally got to in the fourth quarter. And that is, that's the game in a nutshell. We can talk about all the little details in between, but from an offensive perspective, that was the game in a nutshell and what Penn State tried to do. Devonte Ross back shoulder go ball touchdown was also in there as well, so they finally hit that deep shot. And as much as we're talking about Drew Allar completing 58% of his passes for 200 yards and 2 touchdowns today, that is a development for him to trust the receiver and to throw it up to them and to let them try and come down with it. And I got to give credit to Devonte Ross because that was not necessarily his game coming into Penn State, was to go up and get those contested catches. So that was a development on a couple of levels. Now, is that just a one-off thing, or are they going to be able to do that throughout the year? We'll find out, but it's not great that they wanted to come in and be explosive, and they explicitly could not be explosive in the first half. Now, again, that's my interpretation of the game plan. That's my interpretation of what I saw on film, and I'm assuming what they saw on film and what they tried to do, because what I predicted they would try and do, they tried to do that in the first half. So I'm just going to go off of, I think that was the plan. Nick says, I feel like Coach K is being too cute with the calls. Nick, I hope that explains why some of those lateral plays happened in this game. Going to get to your comments here. Actually, I'm sorry. Before we do that, we should get to our sponsors of today's show, the Labatt Postgame Show. We got to tell you about Labatt. This fall, nothing goes better with college football than iced cold Labatt and Labatt Blue Light. A good day for a cold beer or a good day for a room temperature beer outside in a little bit of rain. I think you always want ice cold beer. What am I talking about? But I'm saying if it's a tailgate and, it was 60 degrees with rain, it gave you the internal blanket you needed to get through the game. When you bleed blue and white, you gotta drink blue and light. It's the perfect tailgate beer. It's the perfect beer for being outside in the Northeast because it was born in Canada. Do you think it can't handle Northeast Pennsylvania winters or North Central or Central Pennsylvania, Northeast America is what I wanted to say. Born in Canada, as I mentioned, brewed in the U.S., Labatt has been a game day tradition for fans who know how to celebrate each first down and every touchdown. Here's the best part. When you stock up on Labatt, you can score big off the field too. Just visit rewards.labattusa.com to get rewards with the Buy Beer, Get Gear program. So whether you're tailgating with, let's call it 95,000 fans today, 107 normally, or just watching with, 409 friends at home, crack a Labatt Blue or a Blue Light and make every Saturday a win. Please drink responsibly. Labatt USA, Buffalo, New York. Now, we also have to get to our defensive player of the game, and I think we all know who that's going to be. Here's the thing. Matt McClanahan of McClanahan Law Firm knows that when we're talking about a criminal defense attorney, a bit of a thing, right? If you needed a defense attorney, oh boy, you have found yourself in a situation. Here's the thing. He's a great guy, and he is a super responsible, super Penn State football fan. I'm keeping track because he gave me the numbers. 125th consecutive home game. That's how he and I met, was at a Penn State function. Very accessible, and you can reach him nights and weekends. Just not during a Penn State football game, guys. I mean, priorities here. You may never need a criminal defense attorney, but when you need one, you need to know a name now. It's a very important time to know a name, and Matt McClanahan is a part of the community here. And most of you, you're not going to need his services, but he wants you to know when you do, he's here to help you. Fellow member of the Penn State fan community and here in State College, mattmlaw.com. Appreciate him. Today's defensive player of the game. There was a toss-up for a while, and I'll give you some of the players early. Tony Rojas, I believe, still led the team in tackles by the end. I want to talk about him in just a little bit. Dennis Sutton had some really good plays. Zaki Wheatley, a critical PBU that stopped a touchdown. But we're going with our boy Chaz Coleman. My goodness, I was texting somebody joking, and I'm going to say it out here publicly because I'm irresponsible. The text was, okay, so is Chaz Coleman a first-round draft pick or a first overall draft pick? Dude's 18, and he's out here doing things that veteran defensive ends at Penn State who've gone in the first round do not do from a pass rushing perspective. He had a pass rush where he basically did two things at once that nobody does. There's a certain amount of he doesn't know any better. There's a thing called a Euro step. If you watch basketball, you know what a Euro step is, right? So this is a former basketball player trying to use a Euro step. And normally, you don't Euro step into a power move where you go straight through the tackle. You Euro step, for all the people on the podcast, I did a really bad shimmy to get around somebody. So he does a Euro step, and the tackle's ready for him to bounce either way, right? And then he goes straight through the guy. So as much as he is a 246-pound, 18-year-old freshman, there is a lot of explosive power behind his pads. The sack, fumble, and then return, almost got the trifecta and a touchdown to seal the game and make this all look better. Unreal. So Penn State loses Max Granville and picks up a Chaz Coleman. For Penn State fans, this is awesome. And I'm not even it's just awesome to watch. I'm just excited. I'm enjoying watching Chaz Coleman. These are the sort of special, freaky, fun things you don't always get. And so, a lot of players come in with potential. A lot of players come in with similar traits to Chaz Coleman. Not all of them produce like this immediately. Now, will this sustain throughout the rest of the year? I don't know. Let's just enjoy the moment, right? Chaz Coleman was awesome. Let me read you his final stats. Let me pull it up here very quickly. Chaz Coleman, 4 tackles, which is 4th on the team, 4 solo as well, a sack, 2 tackles for a loss, a pass breakup, 2 quarterback hits, and a forced fumble. Now, there's a couple of times he's getting in the backfield and he's missing some tackles. So if PFF grades offend you, or if you love PFF grades and you're like, T-Frank, he had a terrible tackling grade, it's because he was at such a weird angle with his body that he just couldn't get to the quarterback. But he forced a pressure. And honestly, if you're getting 4 pressures, or 8 pressures or whatever it was, or 6, I don't know what it was, and you're getting that many wins at that high of a clip, you're ruining the passing game for that day. Now, do they scramble and make a secondary play? I don't know, maybe, but that's also on the defensive secondary. So, defensive player of the game, and I think a really, really strong answer to, does Penn State have 3 defensive ends? Yes, they do. Jalen Harvey also had a couple of good plays. He, again, is a little more hot and cold. There was an RPO that I put out on, a read option. See, even I do it. Even I do the RPO read option mistake. So, here's the thing. There's a long-running thing on the Blue White Illustrated message board where people don't understand the difference, and then I have to come in and correct them. And that's fine, because I, at one point, did the same thing of calling RPOs and read options the same thing, as if they were synonyms. It's the point when, then you don't listen. That's the problem. So we all make mistakes like that, but if you hear some information, don't just ignore it. So he comes in on a read option, and he gets a little tug from behind, and he's a little off balance, and he falls over and does this sort of fish flop to immediately get back on his feet, and luckily his teammates corral the play, and then he makes the tackle. And I made the joke, is that hyper athleticism or something completely different? Is that being a great athlete, or is that being maybe not a great athlete? I couldn't tell. I put it out for the internet to decide. So you can go vote on that over on my Twitter. So some initial thoughts from the defense we'll get to here in a second. The chat is burning up. You guys are here and in force. Now, I want to be clear. You don't have to give a super chat to the postgame show to get your questions and comments on air, but I am here tap dancing solo on a high wire with nobody else to hey, what do you think? And then there's sound for our podcast audience, right? So it's helpful to be able to see your comments. They go into a little special box and they're color coded and all that stuff. So Brett is here and he got this in a while ago. Biggest thing, no injuries. Doesn't matter how ugly the preseason wins are. Get to Oregon healthy with something to prove. I think that is a fair way to look at this. Penn State will also say this, right? An ugly win is still a win in the column. They do not care the efficiency of the win. There was a point in the fourth quarter where they were clearly just going into 4-minute offense. So they weren't trying to score touchdowns once they got a 3-score lead, or 3 scores, 20 points, 3 scores. Yeah. So once they got up 20 points, I don't think they were trying to go and run up the score. Brett also says 3 winners: Chaz Coleman, Devonte Ross, Gabe Nwosu. Now, Brett, maybe Nwosu, great punt, 2 kicks out of bounds. Not good. And that's been something that I think has been a little bit inconsistent with him throughout his career, because if I remember correctly, he's done that a couple times over the last couple seasons when he was just the kickoff specialist. So keeping that in bounds is really important, especially for a guy who doesn't have to try very hard, and he could put it in the 3rd row of the student section. I shouldn't say try very. He would, the full force of Gabe Nwosu's leg puts it out of bounds, and there's no return at all. You would rather have that than have it go out of bounds if you were trying to, angle kick it or something like that, which I honestly think it's just a couple miss hits. And James Franklin has described it as his A-ball is better than anybody else's, but apparently the A-ball is not as consistent, or else he would have been the starting punter all this time. Brandy, I love that you're here. Thank you for being a BWI member here. She asks, can we bring Frank Leonard back from retirement? First off, Brandy, you know that we have a 3% female population here on the YouTube channel, so I just want to say thank you for being here. And tell your girlfriends and your other friends about BWI and the YouTube channel, because we're for everybody here. Yeah, the Penn State offensive line hasn't been the Joe Moore Award team that we thought they were out of the gate. There's been some struggles, inconsistencies. Drew Shelton's had a rough start to the year. Again, I put this one out on my timeline where it's the same stunt that has confused and has gotten Penn State since Ohio State did it to them in 2023, where you take a guy on, and again, visual demonstrations are excellent for the podcast audience, but you take a guy from here and you loop them all the way around over here, and then you take two guys and you go like this, and basically they erase the line, and then one guy comes free. It got a sack on Allar. That has worked almost exclusively. Now, the difference was Ohio State did it the other way, where they did it to the A gap, where you had a guy coming up free up the middle. But it's the same concept, just done in reverse. And it is difficult, but for a senior like Drew Shelton to be stuck on that inside block and give up a pressure, it's a communication thing, and it's an awareness thing. So for an offensive line, especially to have it happen on the left side, where you've got a sixth-year senior, a redshirt junior, and then a senior offensive lineman on the left side, and for them to catch them, I mean, maybe it is a certain level of it's just a really great play. But here's the thing: is like Oregon does that, but more. So again, if everything is pointing towards Oregon, their defense does not sit still. It is a hyperactive front that uses blitzes and stunts and moves around, and they can do stuff like that to Penn State. And by the way, they're bigger and more athletic than anybody Penn State's going to face up front this year, having seen Ohio State's defensive line. So yeah, the offensive line's got to do some stuff in the next couple of weeks to tune some things up. But I do think they were less of it this week because of what we talked about to start the show, where everything's going wide instead of between the gaps. Now, there were a lot of dead plays up the middle where Nick Singleton and Katron Allen didn't have a lot of room to run. And so my problem here, Brandy, of going all in on the offensive line specifically was the problem is I need to look at those plays, and you can only really see those from the end zone angle. I need to look at those before I understand, like, was it a real problem? I did see Nick Dawkins totally whiff on a play, but, that it happens to everybody, and I don't want to say one play means he had a bad game. Corey says, do you think it's starting to be a problem, or is this team just working on things? Just looked so disjointed. I don't think today was a just working on things sort of day. That was a game plan where they thought they had a beat on what's going to happen, and they had a plan to attack it. And I think they were right in a lot of different respects. I do think it took them a long... Here's the thing, is I think there was a resistance to moving on from the original plan because they just needed to hit one of them, it would work. And so they kept going to the outsides with Singleton and Allen when it wasn't necessarily bearing the fruit you wanted, but it was still getting you some yards. And this is something, I had this conversation a couple of times over the last 2 or 3 years when watching these things and then wondering out loud, is this going to happen again? So let's rewind to what we said about this defense coming in. That they struggled with containing the run outside the tackles and making sure their perimeter defense was good. You know who really knows that? FIU really knows what they struggled with against Bethune-Cookman. So if I saw it, and apparently, and we're using some context clues, Andy Kotelnicki, James Franklin, and Phil Troutwine, and Stan Drayton, everybody on the offensive staff saw that as well. And they decided they were going to attack it in their own way. I always wonder, do you want to attack the weakness you saw so obviously from the prior week and expect nothing to change from the other team? It's one thing if, like, what you're attacking is a player, like a weakness from this guy struggles in zone coverage, or this guy struggles with reach blocks, or this guy struggles with moving laterally. We're going to put our running back on their weakest linebacker, and we think we can exploit that individual player within a scheme and concept, as opposed to systematically, this was a flaw from last week. And I've always wondered, like, if you then the next week try to hammer that problem, what's the likelihood of it working? Because everybody's aware of it. Do you think they didn't spend the last 7 days trying to correct that? And I would say that they did. Like, I would give credit to FIU and their coaching staff that they were able to fix some of those mistakes from last week. And they eliminated some of their secondary mistakes, some of the missed coverages, busted plays, things like that, by not running 18 different things. They primarily stuck to a couple of coverages. Now, again, I'm going to have to go through and see what they did on third down, some of the things I couldn't see. I love, like, the CBS games because they give you the whole field. They let you see the safeties. And then Big Ten Network wanted to really get up in your grill and like, let's look up into the offensive line and we need to see the quarterback. Sorry, that was a little too long on the up close shot. But like you can't see anything from a football perspective when you're just looking at the box, just at the offensive line, the quarterback, and the linebackers. So there's some things I need to learn. I'm trying not to say, I need to check the tape, guys. I needed to give you the James Franklin postgame, which, by the way, to be fair to Franklin, he said last week, I don't want to just sit here and give you the coach answer. I'd like to give you some of what I know, but there's a lot you just can't know. And he, by the way, doesn't have a replay system like I do here. So, and he's spending his timeouts and his commercial breaks yelling at people and trying to get people in the right place, not just sitting there looking at all these things. Bo starting off fast again for Missouri. That is not going away. And that's going to be something that is going to just be around, right? So that's not going anywhere. So if you want to say that throughout the rest of the year, sure. Like that's going to be something we're going to be talking about. Okay, so some of the other things got to my notes. If you got any more thoughts, you can put them here in the chat. Okay, so Sean, I'm reading this one cold. 10 minutes left to go, 20-0 on the own 40, first down. Didn't run once at that point and try to start mauling it, their tired defense. At that point, eat clockwork run game, and they had 3 passes, then punt. 10 minutes left, up 20-0. So here's the problem is, once again, I was trying to get this show ready, so I did not look closely at some of the stuff in the fourth quarter to give you like any other conversation on top of that. But yeah, they had issues, I think, with some of their passing concepts coming into the game and what FIU was doing. That is another thing I'm very interested to know is what were they doing within that to frustrate Penn State's passing attack, where it felt like there was a lot of kind of checking it down. AG Duke says, anybody think this team beats Oregon in a few weeks? Again, football's a very matchup game. Maybe. It doesn't feel good, but the passing game is working. You know, Devonte Ross got some big plays. Like, we have seen the elements of these things come together where you had Luke Reynolds have a big game. They have multiple answers this year. So not to say that, yes, they do, and it's going to be a Penn State win. That was my preseason prediction. I'm with you, Duke. I don't feel like that's my prediction now. But I do need to see more about Oregon. I need to watch a little bit more from this team. And I will say, like, the thing, again, that is at least somewhat encouraging is I feel like the receivers this year legitimately provide more of an answer. And there's more variety. There's more diversity. You've got a Luke Reynolds who can catch contested passes and can break tackles. Kyron Hudson. Trevor Pena had a bit of a rough game, I think, from a drop perspective or from a catch perspective, but he still had a big 30-yard catch and run where he caught a ball and then made something happen. How many times have we not seen a receiver make something happen after the catch? So 50 yards of yak in this game from the top 2 receivers, 60 overall. So that's a healthy number. That's good that Allar wasn't having to throw everything station to station and have to do it all on his own, because today he was off. Now, we'll just talk about it now because we already brought up Bo Pribula. Drew was off in the first half. Now, he rebounded in the second half, and I want to see those splits. But here's the thing. Things got a little simpler. They simplified the passing attack, and that helped. But those easy layup throws are still a problem for Allar. Throwing the ball into the flat is the yips for him. So here's the thing. It's not shades of Christian Hackenberg, which people have pointed out or kind of thrown in the face of people say that, hey, Drew Allar's pretty good. That was a fundamental thing. Like, the footwork from Hackenberg made it so that he physically couldn't. For Allar, it is a consistency thing, and I think it's a speed thing. He's trying to do it too fast. He needs to just slow down. Previous game, he was ultra slow. Like, he was cool. It didn't bother him. He knew where to go with the football, and he got the football there. In this game, a little bit of adversity at first, and then it started to kind of, I think, twist the screws a little bit. To his credit, in the second half, he had a second half resurgence in terms of his accuracy, I'd say. So I want to go into here to make sure that that's correct as far as I can find it. 7 of 9 in the third quarter for Drew Allar for a touchdown and 103 yards. So bad first half, corrected it in the second half for over 10 yards a catch. We have to give, like, the whole picture matters, but the story of how this game played out and what they were trying to do and how it didn't work and then it did, I do think that matters. Like, you don't want to just throw all of it out because there was a bad half. There were some corrections, but you would like it to be a full game effort against FIU. So then in the fourth quarter, let's see. What was he in the fourth quarter? 0 of 3. So, meh. But 0 of 3, not 0 of 10. So, there's good Drew and bad Drew days, right? And this wasn't a full-on, full-blown bad Drew day. And that, I think, is part of the mental maturation. But you would hope that, like, the bad Drew shows up for a throw or a drive or a quarter. And it did persist for the half. And that's concerning. I'm not trying to put a pleasant spin on that. And I was out here all off season saying Drew Allar can be a first-round draft pick, franchise-defining quarterback. His mental processing, even today, there are throws here and there are decisions where he makes so many good decisions with the football of first read isn't there, bang, throw it to the middle of the field into a tight window for a first down. And then there are overthrows to Khalil Dinkins down the seam because he's rushing his play-action footwork. Like, it's just not clean. It's not a clean narrative. And I had been calling for this year, just eliminate that and go be the guy that we all who watch him on a play-to-play basis and understand some of the things he's able to do, just go be that guy most of the time. Everybody's human. You're allowed to miss some throws. They kept bringing up Josh Allen. Josh Allen still misses some throws. Don't let Hard Knocks make you think he only completes the pass, because I believed it too. Watching Hard Knocks, I was like, man, I forget everything about Josh Allen not being able to complete passes for the first 3 years of his career. Like, he's always been perfect. Every quarterback makes mistakes. And if we're going to continually compare him to Josh Allen makes mistakes. Josh Allen has games where he has really bad games. And yet he flushes it and comes back and makes big plays. And it's been more consistent throughout time. Allar's had a bigger spotlight for longer. And it's both fair and unfair, but this is the year that I don't think we can just excuse it. So, yes, win the game, 200 yards, 2 touchdowns from your senior quarterback. With all the caveats aside, you would still like some of those easy throws to turn into completions, and the completion percentage should be 65-70%. So not good enough is the answer, and I think Drew would say that as well. Now, at the same time, Drew is not a bum, and Drew is going to be an NFL quarterback, so there is middle ground here. But hey, it's the internet, right? Who wants middle ground? Who wants to have that sort of conversation? Eggman, great arm, but is afraid of the deep ball. This is frustrating. And it's ironic. Is this ironic? Alanis Morissette ruined irony for me. I was very young, so I genuinely don't know what irony is at this point in my life. Strongest arm quarterback on the roster, a generational arm talent at Penn State, and is afraid to uncork it. And I don't even want to say unafraid, but is very trying to be too precise with the ball. He's trying to be perfect on the pass arc and the distance, and you can even see it's so light the way he throws the ball on those deep shots. The touchdown, he let that mother effer rip, and it was on target. Like, he just chucked it. He didn't think about placing the ball outside the hash or outside the numbers before the sideline. He didn't think about if the ball has to come down at the right angle so only the receiver can get it at the right distance. He just threw the football. And you'd like to see that more often. And there's I think the 3 passes down the field, the touchdown was obviously the best, and the others were more of what we saw from Drew, of throwing it short. If in doubt, let there be a PI. And it's these things that stack up when you're talking about a quarterback. And so I don't want to spend the whole show on that, but it is something that is very evident at this point of 3 years. And I understand there are people out there that are saying, yeah, I told you this 3 years ago. I knew it at the time. You know it or you don't know it. And here's the thing. Guys get better. Players get better. Again, if we're going to go back to the Josh Allen comparison, Josh Allen wasn't good for 3 years of his NFL career while he changed his throwing motions. So there are guys and things that get better with time. And we have been giving those 3 years to Drew Allar to get better. So here we are grading it in its final season, and we're in week 2, stanza 2. I thought the first week was excellent. It was very, 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 very good. Was it elite? It was not elite, but there was not maybe the conversation for it to be there. This, average. I would say average. Not bad, not horrible, but average. Made some great plays. But again, too many misses. So what does that meter out to? Above average right now. And so is above average good enough to beat Oregon? Again, Oregon again, lol. Yeah. So, oh, yeah. But Patrick says, I'm naive, but I think Allar's going to have a day come September 27th. I think that you could absolutely have that happen. That, again, that's in the range of outcomes for Drew Allar. We're having this conversation as if it's one or the other. It's set in stone, and it's not. I think he can definitely do some of those things for Penn State in that game. Let me run down some of the things that I want to talk about. Tony Rojas. I thought it was a good game from Tony Rojas. I think it was a little bit of a step back from Mari Campbell. So there were more running lanes today than there have been in the past. And this is another one where I don't have like all the information here for you, what was going on there. On the priority of what I needed to figure out, I was like, okay, what's wrong with this offense? It's why we spent 41 minutes talking about the offense, basically, and we haven't really touched on the defense. The linebackers are pretty secure. I have to go back and see all of the plays, but Tony Rojas finishing with 10 tackles, a tackle for loss, and 2 QB hits on the day. I thought it was a strong day from him, a volume day, which is kind of what I was saying last week of I wanted to see more from Tony Rojas. And they're putting more on the linebackers today to control the run game, and my suspicion is that's because they were trying to take away the RPOs, the deep passes, the things that this offense wants to do. One of the big plays, let's talk about one of the big plays, 26-yard pass to the sideline in the first or second quarter that set up a drive. I believe that ended in the 4th down stop. Penn State gets no pressure on that play because they run a 4-man pass rush and then play cover 2. The weakness of cover 2, a lot of times people will say it's in between the safeties or it's in between the corner and the safety. And no, the answer that's actually the weakness of cover 2 is pass rush. If you do not get a pass rush, there are obvious big holes, which I just pointed out, that you can then exploit. And Penn State had a freshman defensive end running into, I think, a sophomore defensive tackle. They both fell over. And then you had Zane Durant trying to run around that, but that's like trying to go around a car accident. And, there was all this time for the quarterback to get all the way to the other side of the field on his read and throw to an opening between a safety and a corner, which is there by design. But it's not there by design for 4 seconds. Also, the Tony Rojas play where he allows the 4th down conversion. There is some nuance there. If you want to hear it, great, I'm going to tell you. If not, I guess skip ahead for 30 seconds or whatever. It's 4th and 2, and Penn State is stuffing the box with bodies. And Rojas he's between the 2 receivers that one of them gets the first down, right? So that's his guy. And then he's on the line of scrimmage, and he's got the edge of the box. He's contained. And that quarterback can run and prove that he'd be willing to keep the ball in those situations. So he has 2 responsibilities on this 4th and 2. He has to deny the quarterback the opportunity to run the read option, because if he flies out to his man, it's a big play for a first down. And as soon as the ball is pulled and the quarterback throws, he triggers on the slot receiver. He does all of that. The problem is, I wouldn't even say he triggers late. He just triggers on time. He's not early. On that previous play, Davian Collins saves the 4th down by coming in and getting an awesome hit on the runner to stop the play. Then on this play, he gets shoved off the line of scrimmage 2 yards. And his job is to beat his guy inside and force the runner back in to Tony. And they give too much run to the outside, too much cushion, and now Rojas has to run to the sideline. The ball carrier is not coming back to him at a favorable angle. So he tackles him on 4th and 2, 2.5 or 3 yards. So that's why that play happened. Now, Tony Rojas is going to get the blame because that's the guy who tackled him, and he was obviously the man who was responsible for that play. But there's only so much a person can do. I think he's incredibly athletic, but I don't think he's so athletic that he can be in 2 places at once. Oh, good. We're gonna get a play-by-play of Bo Perbula from the chat. Bo Perbula just fumbled. It's okay. Bo's allowed to succeed and fail. Drew's allowed to succeed and fail. And Bruno, I'm not mad. I'm just teasing. But we are going to be doing that. Anytime Missouri's playing on the postgame show, we're going to have Yeah But Bo. We should have a Yeah But Bo segment. Let's just save that. Let's do that. We're going to have a Yeah But Bo segment where we're going to check in on Bo Perbula, and you guys can feed me the stats and updates because I'm locked in the cockpit looking at what happened to Penn State. You guys can feed me all that throughout the season of the Yeah But Bo. Would we get more picks if we allowed the defensive tackles to drop into coverage? Eggman, you're a very dry, sarcastic person. I don't know if you're being serious. And I'm in a very literal mood because I'm trying to do the facts guy over here. No, but they it is working where they are getting those guys on screens. And by the way, they have dropped Zane Durant into coverage. Another one of those BlueWhiteIllustrated.com things where we break down all the stuff on play-by-play, and they've dropped Zane Durant into coverage, who has prevented an underneath pass, which then led to a throwaway last week. So, yeah, D-tackle zone coverage, I would not run that. I would allow them to just kind of hang out on screens and keep getting all of those interceptions because they are... Here's another thing to talk about the defense, like the turnovers, the number of turnovers, and Penn State's turnover margin this year has got to be really good. I need to find the turnovers in this game. So turnovers, Penn State had 2, 7 points off turnovers, and Penn State gave up none. So I think they're +5 at this point. Did they have turnover? Did they have a turnover last week? I don't remember off the top of my head, but +5 is really good. So the defense, I think, is doing what they need to do. Now, the time of possession, 34 minutes for FIU. Penn State allowed 0 points. That's what they're going for. And the defense, and this is kind of largely my point about the defense in this postgame, is that if the offense hits some of those home runs in the first half, what FIU has to do in this game changes. And they have to throw the ball down the field more. They have to take more risks against Penn State's pass rush to then go after bigger plays. They were allowed to... I'm fascinated to see what Jenkins's average depth of target was in this game, because it might be near the line of scrimmage. He had a couple of deep shots. He mixed in a couple of those because he's going to do that. And I gotta give him some props. I was wrong. I thought from what I saw against Bethune-Cookman that he was going to do a lot of that stuff. He was trying some stuff out against Bethune-Cookman. I misread that. He did not have a good game. Everything I said was true, but he didn't try some of those things he tried in this game. Now, part of that is because Penn State was denying a lot of those plays at their face. I did a breakdown of Dom DeLuca, by the way, and a play where he registers no stats on the play. He denied the first read by undercutting 2 routes basically at the same time and then forcing the ball down to a check down, in which Chaz Coleman then broke up the pass with a batted pass, which was an awesome, awesome play. So, yes, short completions. They probably gave up more than Penn State fans were comfortable with, nearly 300 yards in this game, but 127 yards passing, and then 100 and... I shouldn't do math live. 115 yards from the top 2 running backs. Let's call it 120 yards from the top 3 running backs. So not ideal, but this is a bit of what we talked about with Jim Knowles of give up one battle to win the war. And they gave up 0 points. So let's be less concerned about that in these situations. Now, again, better team. Oregon runs a similar style of offense, by the way. They love throwing screens and smoke routes into the flat. That's going to be on the table. So a dink and dunk here might turn into a chunk play somewhere else with better, more explosive athletes. I don't want to go there just yet. because I think that there's an opportunity for this defense to be really good. The pass rush, when you've got the starters out there, and I'm now including Chaz Coleman in that group, I think the D-line's pretty good. Alonzo Ford has been healthy for the most part. He's been good. They got a little more snaps out of him. I'm interested to see how he did with more of a workload today. I want to see more of that from him and see some of those defensive tackles. Some of the young guys are still a little half-baked, right? And that's what we're talking about. They got 3 games to get those cookies out of the oven and have them on the shelf ready to present in prime time for the whiteout. Man, that was a good analogy. I ruined it by pointing it out, but I felt really good because I did not have that. That was an unknown path when I opened my mouth to start that metaphor. Michael Fox says, are we forgetting Penn State is the best punter in the country? Stop worrying about the offense. Yep. That's how offense works. That's exactly how that works. Michael, appreciate that one. Aaron says, now I want cookies. Yeah, sorry about that. My bad. Other things from this game. Where are my notes here? Just as a quick reminder, James Franklin's press conference will be coming up momentarily. Greg Pickle's going to get that for us over at the media room, presented to you here on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel, so you can hear what James Franklin has to say about the game. I'm always happy, and this is just a purely selfish thing for me to say. When I say something here and then he says it, and I haven't heard a single thing he said, so I'm not copying him. That always feels good. Sometimes I'm wildly wrong. So there's an entertaining drinking game. Was T. Frank wrong or right? And by the way, drink responsibly. All that stuff. And if you're doing it, have a Labatt. Let's see what else we got here. Pass rush is inconsistent. Yeah, no, they got there by the end. I think the last thing is Penn State is going to have to figure out what it wants to be on the ground. Now, I think they came in with a certain game plan, and so a lot of stuff was in there for this game, but they want that in the offense. It's not like that's just something that they did this week that they're never going to use again. I thought in this game they would come downhill more and try to attack the edges of the box with counters and pulling and power and things like that, and they did. In the second half, they went to that, and they found some consistency. But between the tackles, they can't seem to get those explosive plays. And I think it was, who was it early? Brandy was saying offensive line essentially is they're not as good this year. So between the tackles, that running game, I am curious to see if that's going to be more consistent. You would think with the players they have up front, it would be, but there's still a lot of gelling going on. There was less movement in this game from players playing multiple positions. I counted off the top of my head 3 or 4 line combinations, which is much more normal because what it was is now we're bringing in Cooper Cousins and Anthony Donko's kicking out to tackle, or we're bringing in TJ Shanahan and giving Venga Ioane a breather. It was more of substitutions rather than, hey, let's do a hockey shift change and take the left side, put it on the right, put a new left guard, and put our center out at wide receiver or something like that, or something crazy, right? So there's less of that in this game. So I don't think if we want to say certain things about the offensive line and too many combinations, I don't think that was the case today. Now Bruno's just giving me updates on other games, which is great. Thanks, Bruno. Georgia is 14-3 at halftime against Austin Peay. Yeah, I think there's a little bit of that. A little bit of I undervalued FIU. I think we all undervalued FIU. It's week 2. These things happen. We'll see what happens to Georgia in the second half. But, maybe Georgia's passing attack is suffering because it's not like they've had a well-balanced offense since Brock Bowers left, right? There's always another side, right? There's always another side to any part of this conversation. There is a what about. There's always a what about for us. You got any more questions or thoughts here? I think we did good on this one. I'm getting better. Succinct. I'm giving you 6 minutes to spare after class of what we learned about Penn State football. And maybe here's the thing we could do. What do we want to learn? More about the Penn State's run defense and the rushing offense, and then what was frustrating Penn State's deep passing attack in the first half, other than the obvious missed shots. Because there are a couple plays where they checked the ball down, and there were some incompletions on those checkdowns. And that's part of what I think some of the problems was in the first half was there were probably more deep routes today than there were previously. They wanted to get that on film, but I don't know what what FIU was doing in the secondary to make that a problem. And to the point, everyone's telling me how many times Ohio State scored. Penn State didn't just do it anyway. I think that's a fair thing. So, like, I feel some of these emotions for you guys. Like, I expect certain things, and not to say, like I want to be right. You know, like I want my pregame analysis to be 100% perfect, and then I come here and basically all I say is like, oh, this is what I said, and here's what happened, and then like here's who did it. I would love that, but you know, make mistakes, and then you see the way things are unfold. Like I get frustrated watching things not work, and so I feel those things like pregame, like the beginning of the show. Like if you wanted to be frustrated with this game, a 34-0 win and be frustrated with it, I think that's reasonable. Seeing it was 10-0 at halftime and it was 20-0 into the fourth quarter, and then they put on some quality buffer points here at the end to get it to a respectable blowout number. But that was not the game we watched. We watched a 20-0 game, and I think if that were the final score, the opposite of like the same thing as last week, except a little bit different, where if they were able to finish some of those drives last week and it's 56-11 or whatever, we're having a different conversation. We would be having a 5-alarm fire conversation if this were 20-0. So I'm allowing for frustration. Like I felt frustration of, well, that's not what we expected, everybody. What happened? So yeah, like being frustrated with a 34-0 win, you always have to keep in perspective, it is a win. And there were good things in this game, and Penn State is not a garbage team. And there's a lot of like, well, that's it. They're not perfect. They can't beat Ohio State or Oregon because they're not perfect. That's not how football works. Matchups, situations, game plans, whether you got enough sleep that week and you feel great and you're Nick Singleton and you just, I don't know, I'm just going to run over somebody anyway. Those things can still determine the future. The future is not set, despite what some of us might feel in this moment. But this team is not as explosive as I thought they were going to be, given the number of threats that they have on offense. And I do think they have good threats. I think Kyron Hudson, Traber Pena, Devonte Ross, they've established 3 legitimate receivers on this team. Luke Reynolds had a strong day. We know their running backs are explosive. We saw Kaytron Allen. By the way, didn't even talk about Kaytron Allen because it was just kind of a foregone conclusion. It was the example of, see, this is what you were trying to do the whole game. 16 carries for 144 yards is an awesome day from Kaytron Allen. He is incredibly elusive. He is now more explosive, faster. I think that's the real positive. You know, we're talking about some of the takeaways here in the final couple minutes. Final takeaways. Negatives, unfortunately, like we discussed all those. But the positives are Kaytron Allen is better. Legitimately physically better, more explosive, got that home run hit in this game. That's what we're talking about for him. The receivers, I think, are good. TBD on how good, but they are good. This is going to be a functional offense. Penn State's going to find a way to battle through these games and find multiple answers within a game when they need to adjust. Again, they did that today. There's a positive. If you want to talk about the adjustment in the second half, did result in the touchdown. They did hit the explosive play. Like, this is the question I asked. Was it worth it? To get that explosive play touchdown, 41-yard touchdown, contested catch in the end zone. You got a threefer. You got a receiver making a contested catch. You got Drew Allar throwing a contested catch. And you got the explosive play, deep play touchdown. Was it worth it for the first half? Was it worth it for all the times you didn't have it? Like, did it feel good? I hope it felt good. I hope you enjoyed that moment. And then defensively, I think they continue to be strong. Felt like the secondary had a worse game today from a communication and spacing perspective. But overall, I think they limited the explosive plays through the air. They limited the RPOs very well. And it became, if you're going to win, you're going to carry the ball 39 times for 141 yards. And, oh, sorry, you didn't score any points. So, Chaz Coleman, real deal. You know, like, okay, it's against bad teams, but he's dominating against bad teams. That's a thing. That's a thing. And so pass rush feels good for Penn State. Nittany has improved. His overall athletic profile has improved. He's still a big dude, and he's going to play football in a big dude way. So he's not going to be like Coleman chasing things down from behind all the time. But if the quarterback holds onto the ball, look out, because they're going to get hurt. It's not just they're going to get sacked. They're going to get hurt. Zariah Fisher, strong start to the game. he was out there on the field, and I think his power is something that I've noticed in this game that is different from what I saw from him previously. He's 260 pounds now. Like, he's a full-fledged defensive end. So there's some good stuff from the pass rush. Defensive tackle Zane Durant had a bit of a quiet game, but I think generally the defensive line is good. Zakee Wheatley made some great timely plays, and the corners didn't give up too many individual one-on-ones explosives, right? There were a couple of zone breakdowns we talked about, but overall, a shutout is a shutout, and I don't care how you get there. Getting a shutout is very hard. This is good. This felt good. Hope you had a good time. I'm Thomas Rankar, if you haven't noticed that. This is the BWI Live Postgame Show. We are signing off now, but we got the instant analysis coming from Field Level, from Greg Pickle and Nate Bauer and Sean Fitz. James Franklin's press conference coming up in a little bit. And stay around. We got some post-game highlights for you. We have some new features here from Blue White Illustrated, trying to give you more of that multimedia entertainment. Check out our social medias. Check out our YouTube shorts. And if you would help us out, like, there's a new thing here from YouTube, which is to hype a video. If you see one of our videos or live shows, YouTube knows we do good live shows. They know that. If you see one of our videos out there floating in the internet and you can give it a hype, that'd be helpful. Always like, always watch, even if you've seen it before. Feels good to watch a 10-minute video anyway. Okay. Hope you have a great rest of your day. Enjoy having the rest of your day. It's 4 o'clock. You can watch a whole 2 more football games, or at least 1.5 now that you spent an hour with me. Go watch more football and enjoy opening weekend from the NFL. I'm going to be a mess Sunday night because I don't know if the Bills have any corners. And yes, Labatt is perfect because I was also almost born in Canada. All right. We'll talk to you next week after Villanova. Please come back. Who knows? It might be another close game and you want to talk about it. We'll talk to you later.